Visionary.
Passion.
Activism.
Strategic.
Essential.
Opportunity.
Relentless.
Smart.
Persistence.
Indefatigable.
Empowerment.
Leadership.
The voice.
In the late 60s and particularly the early 70s, lots of women were coming out of college. And I think a lot of us had assumed that if we got a good education, that we'd have more or less the same opportunities as the men we went to school with. And when we got out into the workplace, it was a shock to find out that women simply weren't hired for a whole range of jobs. And of course, those of us who were coming out of college were looking at our male counterparts and saying, what's the difference?
If women were going to get ahead, they were going to have to organize and do something about it themselves.
I mean, that was kind of a revolutionary idea. That we didn't have to take it anymore. But it took Women Employed, really, to say that, to organize around that, to give women the confidence and the knowledge and, of course, the power.
We built Women Employed person by person by person all through those early years. There was one famous meeting at a big Chicago corporation, and the company acknowledged that 100% of the file clerks were women. And when the group asked about that, this senior human resources officer said, well, it's because women are just better at filing. Why are women better at filing, we asked? Because women have shorter thumbs. Well, that was one we think of as one of the radicalizing moments in the early history of Women Employed. We didn't get much done working directly with corporations, so we had to go to the federal government and get the equal opportunity laws enforced in order to begin to see some progress. And we really saw how revolutionary a tool affirmative action could be for women.
I had received this unmarked secret package of proposed regulations that would have gutted affirmative action, and I sat there by myself in the office and said, what are we going to do?
Women Employed was constantly monitoring that activity, organizing women and organizations all over the country to respond to those threats.
The economic status of working women today is so different than it was when we started this work. You can't find a job classification without a woman in it today. We published groundbreaking studies on shattering the glass ceiling and on achieving fair pay in workplaces. And we worked with Chair Eleanor Holmes Norton of the EEOC to write the initial guidelines on sexual harassment.
Some people had no idea that by saying something derogatory to a woman that might be harassment. But Women Employed helped in a really constructive way, I think, to raise those issues.
Same thing for pregnancy discrimination, family medical leave.
In the 80s, Women Employed raised the issue of work-family balance for the first time. When we heard from our women members that, for example, they were prohibited from making a phone call from their desk at 3 o'clock to see if their children got home from school all right. This was really a big issue for them. So it's been important all the way along for Women Employed, and we're definitely not finished yet.
Young women need to understand that there was a generation of women before us that definitely worked hard to get us where we are today, and I think it's really up to us to be able to continue that for the next generation of women and, you know, for all women right now who don't have a voice.
We have 15 million women today who earn less than $25,000 a year. Retail, hospitality, healthcare, security guard, childcare. They're important jobs, we depend on them, and yet they're low paid. They offer very few benefits, if any, so it's very difficult for workers in those jobs to make ends meet.
My previous job in retail, I was a manager, and the hours were anywhere from 40 to 50 hours a week, 12 hours, 13-hour days, and I actually only wanted to use one sick day, and I was simply told that I had to either come to work or find something else.
Being a working woman and being a mom is one of the hardest balances. And I say that as someone who makes it with the benefit of excellent child care, of paid time off. I can't imagine what it's like to try to balance when you don't have all of those things.
I use a vacation day for that day that I'm sick. So I don't take vacations.
It's not about the will of the folks to move ahead. It's about the will of the systems to adjust so that people can get ahead. That's why I think, the work that Women Employed does is so important, because the quicker we can get those systems to change, the more people are going to have the opportunities that are out there.
Another important challenge that we work on is how we can ensure that more people who are low income and low wage have access to the best training that will help them advance.
They work very diligently in trying to seek more financial aid opportunities for students, the working poor women in particular.
I was working 16-hour shifts in order to be free to go to school to become a registered nurse. I have 2 kids. I never stopped working full-time because I needed the money. I couldn't afford just to be working part-time.
Research from around the world shows that when you improve the economic status of a woman, you improve the life outcomes of her family.
Women's concentration in low-wage work and the conditions in the low-wage workplace are really challenging, maybe the most challenging issues that Women Employed has ever tackled. Our vision for the future is that women who are not earning enough to be able to support their families have a fair chance for stability, for security, and for advancement.
I started making like $5.70 per hour working as a cashier. From these $5.70, then 10 something being a CNA, and then now that I'm going to make more than 20 being a nurse. I mean, it's amazing for me. Sometimes I just can't believe it.
We know the women that we serve. Many of us have grown up being raised and taught and loved and cared for by those very women. So for us, this is a calling. It's not just a volunteer role.
You can't just say it's somebody else's problem or it's somebody else's, responsibility to improve. It really is all of us sort of stepping up and saying, I'm going to make a difference.
When I think of Women Employed, I think of empowering activism.
It's an organization that can get it done.
Simply put, their leaders.
Women Employed has never backed down.
We are always keeping our ear to the community, to the environment, so that we know what's changing, what legislatively makes a difference.
Because this is a marathon, it's not a sprint.
It's really important that we continue the progress and not take a step back.
You look at what has happened, and then you look at what can happen, and it does really provide a huge amount of energy to spark change.
I've met a tremendous group of women who have felt the same type of passion about, changing the world.
Everybody can do something to advance this mission of women's economic status, improving it. Everybody can do something.